Hello everyone. Welcome to Daily News Decoded initiative of NEXT IAS. I am Aman Goyal and today we will discuss 5 articles from The Hindu and Indian Express. The first article will talk about the recently concluded Hamas-Israel ceasefire deal. In the second article we will discuss Uniform Civil Code and the context will be Uttarakhand. The third article will talk about Lokpal. In the fourth article we will discuss Model Code of Conduct with reference to the upcoming Delhi elections, and in the fifth article we will be talking about the budget session of Parliament which is starting from 31st January. Now talking about the first article, it talks about Gaza truce approved by Israel Security Cabinet. Basically very recently Israel and Hamas, they have concluded a ceasefire deal. Now when you see the backdrop of this particular ceasefire deal for this particular article. If we see the relevance of this particular topic for your UPSC prelims as well as mains, we will discuss this in detail in our upcoming slide, but to be very specific, it is an important part of your GS2 IR section, International Relation Area. A ceasefire is not basically peace. However, in a region that is being marked by an act of terror and which was followed by devastation which led to the killing of more than 46,000 people and had the potential to engulf entire West Asia, even this ceasefire is a sign of hope. Now basically what is the background of this particular news and why this ceasefire has been there in a newspaper article? Just before the swearing in of United States President-elect Donald Trump, and just hours before the outgoing US President Joe Biden gave his final address to the American people on 15th January 2025, Israel and Hamas, they basically struck a ceasefire deal ending the 15-month long of rivalry over Gaza Strip. Now what was the immediate background of this particular ceasefire deal? On 7th October 2023, which is also celebrated as Jewish Sabbath Day, these Hamas, they launched Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, where what they did, they killed more than 1200 people and made more than 250 captive. As a retaliatory measure, Israel, it launched very hefty, retaliatory firing on this Hamas, and this led to the start of this Israel-Hamas issue. If you see this particular topic, you will understand that in the past UPSC has covered this topic multiple times in mains. In 2018, UPSC asked India's relations with Israel have of late acquired a depth and diversity which cannot be rolled back. Discuss. Again in mains 2022, UPSC talked about I2U2. We will be talking about I2U2 in our upcoming slides. How will I2U2, that is India, Israel, UAE and USA grouping, transform India's position in global politics? So basically these were certain questions that were asked by UPSC in the mains in recent past. Now if we talk about the importance of this particular topic for our prelims as well as mains, if we see this particular topic from prelims perspective, we have certain mapping portion. As I will show you in the next slide, you will have regions like Gaza Strip. You will have regions like neighboring countries of Israel. There are 4 countries with which Israel share its border. Which are those 4 countries? Then you should talk about Strait of Hormuz. Then you should also cover Philadelphia corridor. You should also cover Mediterranean Sea, the countries which border, especially the countries which do not border. You will realize that in recent past, across years, UPSC has been repeatedly asking question on West Asia. So West Asia, or you say Middle East, this is basically one of the favorite topic of UPSC with respect to prelims, mapping and mains IR section. If you cover this topic from your main side, the relation of India with West Asia, as we are too much dependent on West Asia for what? For energy security. So it becomes very important from that perspective also. Now if we look at this particular, as I told in my previous lecture also, in my previous discussion, that whenever you get a topic in the newspaper, do not cover only that aspect which has been covered in the newspaper article. As we know, this ceasefire deal has been struck by Israel and Hamas, but still it has not come into a practical idea. But when you are covering this Israel-Palestine topic, you should understand this topic in detail, so that in future, ever UPSC asks any dimension of the topic from you, you should be ready to answer every possible dimension. So what all dimensions we will look into? Why in news? This I have already covered. Immediate background, this I already told you that 7th October 2023, which was Jewish Sabbath day, they launched Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, which led to this particular devastation. Next, we will talk very briefly about Israel and Hamas. What is Israel and who are these Hamas? Historical background. This is basically the most important area where we should focus today, because we should understand the history behind this particular conflict. Next, we should talk about the ceasefire deal. This is the immediate context because of which we are discussing this particular article today. Next, we will talk about India's stand on this issue. This is again a very important area. Next, we will discuss impact of this deal on India. Further, impact of the deal on world. Then what is this two-state solution? UPSC, if I am not wrong, in 2017 asked a question in prelims that this two-state solution has been in news with reference to which of the following country? One of the option was Israel. Next, we will talk about challenges with respect to this deal. Then what is the way forward? The last topic that you should keep in mind is, whenever you are covering a topic very comprehensively, prepare a certain list of important keywords which you must replicate in this topic if it is asked in UPSC mains. Those topics must be replicated by, those keywords must be replicated by you there in UPSC mains answers. This is the map that we were talking about. Basically, there are certain locations like Gaza Strip, you have Philadelphia corridor, you have this Netzarim corridor, you have Mediterranean Sea, you have Israel, its neighboring countries, then Dead Sea you should talk about. So these are certain reasons which must be covered very comprehensively by you. If we talk about Gaza Strip, this is basically a 41 kilometer and 10 kilometer wide territory. It is between Israel, Egypt and Mediterranean Sea. So this is between Israel, Egypt and Mediterranean Sea. This is Gaza Strip, this portion which is there in saffron color, right? Basically it was part of Arab state only under the original UN plan, right? Then it was occupied by Egypt, and then Israel led to a 6 days war and basically recaptured Gaza from Egypt. If you talk about Philadelphia corridor, this is basically a 14 kilometer. If you talk about Philadelphia corridor, it is a 14 kilometer long strip of land which represents the entirety of border between Egypt and Gaza, right? So this is the main bone of contention between Israel and Hamas today. And as I will discuss in my upcoming slides also, as part of this ceasefire deal, this is one of the provisions that Israel will vacate this Philadelphia corridor, right? Now what is, if we talk about Israel, Israel is basically a country in West Asia. Mediterranean Sea is its western border, as you can see here also, right? So Israel shares its border with Egypt, it shares its border with Syria, Lebanon and Jordan. Next, if you talk about Hamas, it is basically a Palestinian armed group. Palestinian armed group and a political movement in Gaza Strip. It basically abstains from the acceptance on the existence of Israel in that particular area, because it considers that to be Palestinian land. And these Hamas, they are in complete control of Gaza Strip since 2007. Hamas, basically they are an offshoot of Muslim Brotherhood. In 1987, and even their name, it means Islamic Resistance Movement, right? So they are basically Palestinian armed group whose perfect aim is that they want this particular area, and they do not consider that to be a Israeli area but a Palestinian land. Basically, if you talk about Israeli-Palestinian conflict, you should understand the history behind that particular conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it stems from various issues like historical claims. You can also say nationalist movements and religious importance of the region. These are three most important topics which led to Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This was basically a dispute over territory and identity, that we want territory also and we want identity also. So entire Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it can be reflected in two terms, territory and identity. Now if you see the historical background associated with this particular conflict, try to understand this particular timeline very comprehensively. Before 1997, it was the Ottoman Empire which used to rule this particular area. Then 1917, this is very important, understand it by the name of Balfour Declaration. Basically, the seeds of the conflict, they were laid in 1917. Why so? Why it is famous by the name of Balfour Declaration? Because the then British Foreign Secretary Arthur James Balfour, on whose name this declaration is there, he expressed official support of the Britain for a Jewish homeland. They called it their national home in Palestine under the Balfour Declaration. So basically it was in 1917 that the British called for a Jews national home in Palestine. Then 1936, it led to Great Palestine Revolt. The seeds were sown here. 1936, Great Palestine Revolt. Then in 1947, this was a very major event. It was the end of British rule. It was basically the end of British mandate on Palestine. UN Resolution 181. UN Resolution 181, just remember it from your exam perspective. This particular resolution was passed in 1947 and it led to the partition of Palestine. Though India, it was initially opposed to this UN partition plan for Palestine in 1947, but with time we recognized Israeli sovereignty in 1950. So this was about UN resolution of 181. Then if you talk about 1948, this was the time when Israel declared independence, right? And it led to first Arab-Israel war, where the newly independent state of Israel, it had to fight against its Arab neighbors like Egypt, Jordan, then we have Lebanon, Syria and Iraq. So basically this was the time which led to first Arab war. Next is 1964, which gave birth to PLO. What is PLO? Palestine Liberation Organization. Right, so 1964, this PLO was formed. What was the aim of PLO? Its aim was to free Palestine from the clutches of Israel and Jewish domination. Then after 1964, we saw 6 days war in 1967. This was a 6 days war when Israel, basically it captured Gaza Strip back from Egypt. They basically seized Golan Heights from Syria, West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt. So this was the war when Israel, it recaptured multiple areas from Lebanon also, from Egypt also, right? Then after this 1967 6 days war, in 1972, we had Munich Olympic killing. What was this Munich Olympic killing? 11 athletes of Israel, they were killed by PLO, which was formed in 1964. So 11 athletes were killed. Then in 1973, we saw a very important event which is famous by the name of Yom Kippur War. We also call this October War. Basically, or we also know this by the name of Ramadan War. This was a surprise attack by Egypt and basically Syria on Israel. This was a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria on Israel. This Yom Kippur, this is a very auspicious day, and most of the soldiers of the Israel were on leave. So Egypt and Syria, they put a surprise attack on Israel and it led to heavy devastation. Next major event in the history was Camp David Accord. This was there in 1978. The main motive of this Camp David Accord was framework for peace in Middle East. It was brokered by US. Right. Then in 1987, we saw first Intifada. Basically, Ahmad Yassin, he formed Hamas. Right. So, this first Intifada was there in 1987, which even led to the formation of Hamas, a violent offshoot of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, as I have already explained. And this first Intifada, it grew into a small war between Palestinian militants and Israeli army. Then the next major event was Oslo Accord of 1993-1995. Basically, under the Oslo Accords, under the Oslo Accord, basically Israel and PLO, they agreed to officially recognize each other and renounce the use of violence. They both agreed that yes, Palestine Liberation Organization as well as Israel, that yes, we recognize each other and we will abstain from violence. Then 2000, it led to second Intifada, basically the break of the Oslo Accord, and it was more violent than first Intifada, which was there in 1987. Right. Then in 2005, basically Israel, it began unilateral withdrawal of Jewish settlements in Gaza. This was the event of 2005. 2007, as I told, that since 2007, Hamas have already controlled Gaza Strip. 2020 led to this Abraham Accords. Then what was this Abraham Accords? They were signed in 2020 between Israel and several Arab states to basically, smoothen the relations. 2023, as I have already told in the beginning only, that Hamas on 7th October 2023, on the Jewish Sabbath day, they launched Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, which led to devastation till date. Then in 2025, 15th January 2025, it led to this ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, because of which we are discussing the today's article. Try to take a screenshot of this particular slide, because this slide is very important to understand this topic of Israel-Palestine relations, Israel-Palestine issue, then how is India related to various events, because till the time you don't know the historical background of a particular thing, it is very difficult to understand it from exam perspective. This one slide will give you a good understanding on how to cover this particular topic from exam perspective. Now, if we talk about this particular deal, which we are calling a ceasefire deal, then what is this deal? Basically, this is the deal that has been mediated by Qatar and US. So, Qatar was the main mediator. So, what are the terms and conditions that have come to picture so far? That this ceasefire, basically it is a 6-week ceasefire. This particular ceasefire will take place in 3 phases. So, it is leading to a 6-week ceasefire, which will allow Israeli forces to withdraw from Gaza Strip. Then withdrawal from Philadelphia corridor. This is the main provision, that Israel will vacate from Gaza Strip as well as Philadelphia corridor. This particular corridor I have already explained in this particular slide. Right. Third provision is hostage and prisoner exchange. Basically, Hamas will return almost 33 hostages of Israel, and Israel will also return somewhere between 900 to 1650 Palestinian detainees. Humanitarian aid, this is again a major provision, because this is the main instance because of which the people there are suffering, that there will be increased humanitarian aid for people in Gaza. Then de-escalation measures, that Israel will pose its military escalation in the Gaza and towards Hamas. So these are certain measures that have come as a result of this particular deal, and the only motive is to free these hostages and to better the condition of the people living there, because that has already been worsened by the recent incidents of last 15 months. Now, next important thing that we should discuss is what is India's stand on this particular issue. India's stand on this issue can be discussed in 3 phases, and this is a very important slide. You should understand it very comprehensively. India's stand on this issue can be understood from 3 phases. The first phase is, which we know by the name of blow cold. This is the phase of 1947 to 1992. Second phase is the thaw, 1992 to 2014. Third phase is from since 2014 onwards, that is the Modi government came in power in 2014. We call this red hot. What are the beauties of the phase 1? Basically, India backed Palestinian claim, right? So this was the first thing, that India backed Palestinian claim in the first phase, which was from 1947 to 1992. We also recognized Israel in 1950, but we did not maintain any diplomatic relation with Israel. As I told you in my previous slides also, that it was in 1950 that we officially recognized Israel. Further, in 1974, India became the first non-Arab nation to recognize PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, as legitimate. Next is, in 1988, we were one of the first to recognize Palestinian state. So this was blow cold. This was the cold phase of our consideration over this particular phase, or you say our relation with Israel and Palestine. If you talk about the second phase, which we are saying from 1992 to 2014, that is the thaw phase. Here PM Narasimha Rao, he established full-fledged diplomatic relations with Israel. The same thing we abstained in our phase 1. PM Narasimha Rao, he basically established full-fledged diplomatic relations with Israel. We also continued our support for Palestinian cause of right to self-determination. We were always in favor of Palestinian support, Palestinians' right to self-determination. Then since the upgradation of our ties with Israel, defense and agriculture, basically they form the 2 main pillars of our relations with Israel. So this is all about phase 2. The most important phase in our relation is phase 3. That is from 2014 till present, which we say by the name of red hot. Basically, India de-hyphenated its relation with Israel and Palestine. So what does that mean? We de-hyphenated a relation. We considered Israel on separate terms and Palestine on separate terms, that we will deal with both of them. We are not going to compromise one country for the sake of other. We will be supporting whatever we feel right for one and the other, but we are de-hyphenating our relations. We are not compromising Israel for Palestine or vice versa. So de-hyphenation of the relation was the main mark of this particular thing. In 2017, PM Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to ever visit Israel. And we elevated our partnership, our relation to strategic partnership. Then in 2021, this I2U2, that is India, Israel, UAE and US. This platform was established to basically help in various strategic matters like maritime security, infrastructure, and we also call this West Asian Quad. I2U2 is known by the name of West Asian Quad. Then this was also the phase where in 2023 India openly condemned Hamas attack on Israel. So it is not like that we compromise a relation for the sake of some certain benefits, but we were there for one country or the other whenever we felt anything right or wrong. If we discuss the impact of this deal on India, basically this ceasefire deal, this will help India in balancing relation with Israel and other Arab states like you say Iran, or you say Saudi Arabia, or you say Qatar. Basically all the West Asian countries, these Arab states are very important for India. So this will help, this will ease the path for India to balance its relations with those countries. Next is diaspora. Basically West Asia is home to 9 million Indians. and they are a very rich source of remittances to India. Also, the low skilled labor that is easily migrating to West Asia, that is another employment generating factor in India. So diaspora will get a further boost and they will be more secure and safe there. Energy security, this is the most important thing for which India is dependent on West Asia, be it natural gas or crude oil. So energy security will also get a boost, and the prices of crude oil will not rise to much extent. Humanitarian aids in Palestinian areas, basically we will be able to give more humanitarian aids in these Palestinian areas without any restrictions from Israel. Then defense and technological cooperation, which we are continuing with Israel, this will get a further boost and we will be able to at least continue and maintain our diplomatic relation in various fields with Israel. Then what will be the impact of this ceasefire deal on the world? Basically, since this Israel-Hamas war began in October 2023, we have seen global inflation ticking another levels, and the global growth has seen a slowdown because of rise in crude oil prices, because of instability in the global arena. So, but this ceasefire is a hope. This ceasefire is a sign that inflation will take a dip and growth signs will be better in the upcoming future. Avoidance of full-scale war. There was a time when various other countries of the region like Iran, which basically backs various proxies like Houthis, like Hezbollah in Lebanon, it backs various proxies. So there was a time when Syria, Iran and other countries, they were also in the line to enter this particular war. So this ceasefire will help to avoid a full-scale war. Humanitarian crisis can be avoided, like we saw humanitarian crisis in Yemen, which was basically a food crisis, and you also say a bed medicine crisis which led to the death of thousands of children. Then we also saw this humanitarian crisis in Syria, where this al-Bashar government was also, it fell, and he used sarin gas. So such humanitarian crisis can be avoided. Path for long-term peace, and basically it can also pave way for two-state solution. Now what is this two-state solution? Basically two-state solution is the idea that Palestine and Israel are the two states which will have to exist equally, which will have to exist parallelly on the same land for the long-term solution to this particular issue. Then another very important impact of this deal on the world can be, it can act as a precedent for Russia-Ukraine war. That another war which is there in the vicinity or which is there in the global scenario, this deal can pave a way for them that yes, the solution will come from dialogue and not from war. So that is another important thing which can basically lead to all these things. Next, if we talk about challenges in maintaining peace in this region, that do you think it is very easy to maintain peace in this region, or these such kind of ceasefire deals were not tried in the past? The first dimension that we should think from is, do you think Israel and Hamas will be able to keep the agreement? We recently saw Israel-Hezbollah deal, ceasefire deal, which was broken in no time. So basically it will be very difficult for both the sides, Israel as well as Palestine, because there are negative elements on both the sides. There are elements on the Israeli side also who don't want a permanent solution to this Gaza region, and they want to use it as a buffer region. Similarly, in Palestine also there are elements who want this this issue to be never ending. So this will be very challenging for both the sides, and even a small deviation from the ceasefire can again lead to havoc. Next is the role of Iran. Basically, as I already told, that Iran backs various proxies like Houthis and Hezbollah in Lebanon and Houthis in Syria. So basically these proxies, they combine, and like we saw in this Hamas-Israel war also. So Iran-backed proxies are a major challenge to peace in this particular region. So this will be another challenge. Increasing mistrust between Israel and Arab countries. This we saw in the case of Syria also, which led to the fall of the government, that this mistrust is increasing between various countries. Internal political pressure on Israel as well as Hamas. Now understand this thing, that there is internal political pressure on both the parties, Israel, because Benjamin Netanyahu, their prime minister, he basically proclaimed, he declared officially that I will we will finish Hamas. But now you are conducting a ceasefire deal with Hamas, on various compromising terms. So it is basically giving them a signal, a feel of weakening. So Hamas as well as Israel, they are having internal political pressure from their own region, their own country, to not bend down. Then historical claims on Jerusalem and basically not so clearly defined boundaries, plus consideration of various religious texts as the main documents. These are certain other reasons which will keep peace in this particular region very challenging. Now, if we look for way forward, basically way forward will be that this political intricacies are one thing, but the major challenge for the international community in this particular region will be to maintain peace, stability. Why so? So that these instances like Abraham Accord, as I told, this was an accord between Israel and various other Arab states, and other prosperous measures can be taken for the long-term stability of this region. Why so? Because this ceasefire deal, as I told in the beginning, it is just a sign of hope. It is just a hope that has been given by these two parties, but the international community, especially the US, will have to play a very pivotal role in maintaining long-term peace in this particular region. Various keywords, as I was talking about in my initial slide, that you must keep in mind for your mains perspective. The first should be two-state solution, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, Oslo Accord, Abraham Accord, Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, Balfour Declaration, Philadelphia Corridor, Netzarim Corridor, Yom Kippur War, or we also say this by the name of October War, or Camp David Accord. Whenever you are answering any question on Israel-Palestine conflict, or you say the impact of Israel-Palestine conflict on India, or you are writing answer on West Asia, there also you will have to talk about this particular conflict. Try to use certain keywords from here, they add value to your answer. Now we have also given a practice question to you people from this particular topic. We would encourage you to write this answer and drop in the comment box so that your peers can judge and basically put some comments. The question says, unstable nature of West Asia's geopolitics can potentially destabilize India's connectivity and development projects in the area. Discuss in the context of Israel-Hamas conflict. So whenever you are targeting any particular mains question, just try to develop an approach for this. What will be the approach based on this particular question? Because if you get the approach right, there are least chances of you missing any major dimension in your answer. So it is talking about unstable nature of West Asia's geopolitics. This West Asia's geopolitics can be your intro. You can give some data or some points to validate this. It can potentially destabilize India's connectivity and development projects in the area. So intro can be, as I talked about this, in the body part 1, you will have to very briefly talk about unstable nature, that why it is unstable. In the body part 2, talk about how it will destabilize India's connectivity and give certain examples. In body part 3, talk about its impact on development projects in the area, right? And finally, you should talk about steps taken, since it is a 15 marker, and the way forward. So try this particular question and drop the answer in the comment box. Thank you. And the next article is on Uniform Civil Code. Basically, the backdrop of the article is that Uttarakhand gears up for Uniform Civil Code, and there is resistance from certain Muslim organizations for this Uniform Civil Code there. If we look for the relevance of this particular topic from our mains perspective, under your GS1, it very well suits the topic of secularism, and under GS2, it suits your DPSP article 44, right? Now, when we look at PYQs, previous year questions asked by UPSC from this particular topic, in 2015, UPSC asked, discuss the possible factors that inhibit India from enacting for its citizens a uniform civil code as provided for in the Directive Principles of State Policy. There is again a previous year question in prelims. In the prelims of 2016, UPSC asked this particular question, that the DPSP in the Indian Constitution are inspired by the directive principles given in the Constitution of Ireland. DPSP aim at providing social and economic democracy. Implementation of uniform civil code for its citizens is the directive principle of state policy. So basically this question was on DPSP and specifically on uniform civil code also. You should try to attempt this particular topic, this particular question, and comment the answer in the comment box. Now, if we look for the comprehensive coverage of this topic, you should understand what is Uniform Civil Code, its background, status of personal laws in India, then we have global scenario, then Constituent Assembly debate on UCC, this is important, then merits, demerits, that is challenges. Then as we are talking in the context of Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code, so we should also discuss certain features of Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code which are kind of new, like live-in relationship, and then it is also talking about certain tribals factors. Then what is the observation of Supreme Court on Uniform Civil Code? What is the observation of Law Commission of India, and what is the way forward? Now when we talk about what is Uniform Civil Code, basically Uniform Civil Code refers to a unitary system of personal laws applicable to all irrespective of religion. Now what are the matters that are basically covered under the scope of these personal laws? These matters are marriage, divorce, inheritance, maintenance, and so on. It is basically intended to replace the fragmented personal laws features, that there are so many personal laws here and there. It wants to replace that with a unified, one codified personal law, right? Now when we talk about Uniform Civil Code, you should also know that what are the constitutional provisions regarding Uniform Civil Code in India. Then Article 44, which is a DPSP, Directive Principle of State Policy, it says that the state shall endeavor to secure a uniform civil code for the citizens throughout the territory of India. So basically it is the duty of the state to secure a uniform civil code for its citizens across the territory of India, right? Now next is you should understand the background, that what is the background associated with Uniform Civil Code in India. Is it a new feature, or were we having a debate on this since a very long time? So basically the call for a Uniform Civil Code, it begins from colonial India. At that point of time, what they were trying to do, they were trying to create a uniform civil code, but they were also trying to keep Hindu and Muslim personal laws separate. That we will create a unified law, uniform law, but Hindus and Muslims personal laws will be kept separate. Then we had this constitutional debate. So basically while this drafting of constitution was going on, this debate on Uniform Civil Code, it re-emerged, and there were advocates like advocates of this UCC. The best advocate of UCC was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So what was the settlement? The settlement was Article 44, that to keep it in DPSP. Next, post-independence. So basically what was post-independence? Basically the post-independence Hindu code bills, they were enacted by the Indian Parliament in 1955-1956. But again this Shah Bano case in 1985, it brought this matter of Uniform Civil Code into limelight and again opened the door for the judiciary to look into this issue. Then recent developments. What are the recent developments? Basically Sarla Mudgal case of 1995 and the Shaira Bano case of 2017. The Shaira Bano case was related to this triple talaq. And what was the Sarla Mudgal case of 1995? Basically there was this Hindu guy, he married a Hindu woman. Later on he wanted to marry another Hindu woman. So he, along with that another Hindu woman, they both converted to Islam and they both married. This first wife of this guy, she filed a case. Then this guy, he said that now I am in Islam and Islam permits 4 marriages. What happened? Under the pressure of the first wife, he again reconverted to Hinduism. Then the second wife of that person, she filed a case against him, and this was a big matter where the court said that this polygamy is basically it is not permitted in the Hindu law, and again this debate around UCC was reignited. So basically background story tells us that the debate around UCC, it was there in the colonial India also, and it prevails till present time. So there is a need to look into this particular matter. Now when we look for status of personal laws in India, basically personal laws subjects like I told, marriage, divorce, maintenance, inheritance, they fall under concurrent list of Indian Constitution, that is under Article 246. You should remember these facts from the perspective of your prelims examination. Basically Hindu personal laws, they are by and large secularized also, and they are modernized also. So these Hindu personal laws, they were codified in 1955-1956 by the Parliament, and the code has been divided into 4 parts. What is this first part? Hindu Marriage Act. Hindu Succession Act of 1956, Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, and Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. So these are the 4 acts under this Hindu personal laws. Basically they were codified and they were divided into these 4 parts. When we talk about Muslims, then Muslim personal laws, they are still not codified and they are traditional in their approach. Like this Shariat law of 1937, it guides various Muslim personal laws. Then Christians and Jews, they have their own separate personal laws. Then comes a very special act which is called Special Marriage Act of 1954. Then what is special about this particular act? It permits inter-religion marriage, that the people of 2 different religions, they can marry each other. This was the main provision of this Special Marriage Act. Now when we talk about exceptions to various personal laws, then under Article 371, basically Constitution, it makes various exceptions to family law with respect to Assam, Nagaland, Mizoram to protect their own particular identity. Another exception is Goa and Uttarakhand. They are the only 2 states which are having uniform civil code provision in their particular state. So various state, the status of personal laws in India is this particular thing which you should remember to understand that what is the current status as per the personal laws in India. Now apart from India, if you look at global scenario, you will realize that Western countries like France and Germany, they are having their own uniform civil code in one way or the other. Then we have Middle Eastern countries, Turkey is one example, South Asian countries, India. There is ongoing debate with respect to uniform civil code. But in Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia is one example where there is discussion on creating a uniform civil code. African countries, Egypt is there is a mixed legal system, but there are efforts to modernize and unify the legal system. In the Latin American countries, Brazil is there, civil code was first adopted in 1916. It was basically modified in 2002 and it is applied to applied uniformly to all the citizens. So when we look at global scenario, most or I should say many countries are there which are having this provision of uniform civil code. Now when we look at the debates in the Constituent Assembly on the topic of uniform civil code, you will find that there were proponents also of this uniform civil code and there were opponents also. When we talk about the proponents of uniform civil code, we have the names like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, we have K.M. Munshi, we have Mino Masani, and basically their arguments why they were in the favor of uniform civil code. The first argument was national unity and secularism. They believed basically that uniform civil code, it was very essential to promote national unity and secularism in the country, which will basically preserve the communal harmony also, and it will lead to national integration of India. Second was gender justice. This is a very true point. Basically this will definitely lead to women empowerment. This will empower the women. This will lead to, this will prevent their harassment from certain certain features like you say polygamy or you say triple talaq and certain other features. Then the third thing that they talked about was modern legal framework, that this is very necessary towards creating a modern legal framework that treats all the citizens equally regardless of whatever religion they have. Then when we talk about opposition to this UCC, there were some names like Ismail Sahib. Then we have Naziruddin Ahmad. They were critique of this concept of uniform civil code. Why? They said first that it hampers your religious freedom. That Article 25 of the Indian Constitution, which gives you the freedom to choose your religion, this is coming in that particular way. Second, it talks about community autonomy, that any particular community, it should have that autonomous right to choose whatever practice, whatever personal law, whatever religious belief they want to follow. It should not be a dictation from the state on that particular community. Then what was the common ground from this proponent and opponent? It was middle ground, and the middle ground was to keep this concept of uniform civil code under Article 44 as a DPSP. Next, if we talk about the merits, that what are the benefits of uniform civil code? The first benefit is it fulfills your constitutional duty. What constitutional duty? Article 44. As I told earlier also, that it is a DPSP where the state endeavors to secure a uniform civil code for all the citizens throughout the territory of India. Next, we have Article 14, that it would advance gender justice, national integration and equal rights for all. Third, it will help in principles of secular state, which is a basically basic feature of an Indian constitution. Next is, it is very important to realize the needs of contemporary society. Polygamy is one perfect example in this context, that to realize the needs of the this contemporary society, we should come over the concepts like polygamy, which is legal under Muslim personal laws, but basically this is two anti-rights of the modern women. Fulfilling international obligations, basically it justifies India's membership at various levels. Even in the United Nations Human Rights Convention, it justifies India's position there. Simplification of laws, basically when we will have one single codified law, it will lead to simplification of various other laws, and there will be lesser chances of disputes and easier simplification of various disputes that occur because of multiple personal laws at multiple places. Next, if we talk about challenges, so the first challenge I already told, it violates religious freedom. This was basically even the arguments of the opponents of the Constituent Assembly. They said the rights given by the Constitution, like Article 25, Article 29, which permits people to basically maintain their unique cultural traditions, to choose their own religion, they are hampered. Threat to cultural diversity. Why so? Because India's cultural and cultural diversity is too much that imposing one national code on all the tribals, on all the communities, on all the various religious groups, it will be a threat to their cultural diversity. They will not be able to celebrate and resonate with their diversity in a broader way. Potential for political misuse, that it will lead to marginalization of the various marginalized communities, and it will lead to their alienation, and they may be used in the time of elections. Then there are certain legal challenges also, because as I told, this is a part of concurrent list under Article 3, this 246, and it will hamper center-state relations. When we talk about Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code, because of which this particular topic was in news, there are two important things that you should discuss. First is the concept of live-in relationship. Second is about applicability. Basically, Uttarakhand said that this live-in relationships, they are similar to marriages, and they require compulsory registration through a statement of live-in relationship. And if you are unable to register, there will be a fine, and basically there are other provisions also, there will be punishment. So it allows termination of such relationship by either party via statement of termination. Then when we talk about applicability, basically the point is live-in relationship concept, they are trying to demotivate the concept of live-in relationship. That is what is the main purpose of this particular provision in Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code. When we talk about applicability, it applies to all the residents of Uttarakhand, but it identifies only binary gender, that is male and female. So LGBT community has been kept outside this. It also does not apply to scheduled tribes. Why so? Because their own traditions and cultures have to be kept sacred, have to be kept very secluded. What was the observation of the Supreme Court in various judgments? Like in the case of Ahmad Khan versus Shahbano case in 1985, Supreme Court again reignited the debate of Uniform Civil Code and called for gender justice, and there is a need for uniformity in personal laws. Then I talked about Sarla Mudgal case. Again, it talked about that there cannot be injustice to the women, and there should be a uniformity in the personal laws. When we talk about John Vellamattam versus Union of India 2003 case, here also Supreme Court struck down discriminatory provisions within personal laws, and it again reiterated for a change. In the Shaira Baino case of 2017, again we talked about triple talaq. So this was again the case when this UCC matter came up. So in the various judgments of the Supreme Court itself, it was very clearly reflected that Uniform Civil Code as an idea needs certain modifications, but it should be implemented. There is a need. If we talk about the observation of the Law Commission on Uniform Civil Code, the 21st Law Commission of India it said there is no need even for there is no desirability. It is neither necessary neither desirable at this stage to look into this Uniform Civil Code. But in its report published Reform of Family Law in 2018, it again reiterated the same view that it is neither necessary nor desirable. But 22nd Law Commission, irrespective of the fact what was put forward by the 21st Law Commission, it said that there is time, there should be uniformity in the personal laws, and we should look into the provision. It is necessary to look into various provisions of Uniform Civil Code. It is necessary that a change should be there should be uniformity, there should be a good codification. Now, when we look for way forward, that what is the way forward to this particular thing, there have been various judgments by Supreme Court, there have been various observations by Law Commission of India. What is the way forward? The first way forward is there should be gradual reform in personal laws. Instead of coming to a, instead of altogether coming to a uniform civil law, there should be gradual reforms in the personal laws of every religion. If there are Hindu personal laws, there are Christian, Jewish, Muslim personal laws, they should be reformed, they should be modernized, they should be adapted to the changing needs of time. Next, there should be broad-based consultation. It should not be like one-size-fits-all approach. Various parties, various stakeholders must be consulted, and then a consensus should be made. Focus on gender justice and rights. This is basically must, and this is not necessary that we can do this only through Uniform Civil Code, but every action of ours, even in the daily life, should reflect that yes, we are focused on gender justice and their rights. Consider state level UCC initiatives. Instead of a Uniform Civil Code at national level, it is better that it is implemented in parts initially at various state levels, so that adoption becomes more easy, and various needs, various particular needs of the state, like Uttarakhand came up with this live-in relationship concept, Uttarakhand kept their scheduled tribes outside this, those also can be incorporated. Finally, we should encourage legal literacy and awareness. Why so? So that the rights of the women or the rights of various communities, if they are not taken care of, they can raise their voice, we can make them literate and aware by their own rights. We have also given you certain practice questions on the topic of Uniform Civil Code. Try to attempt these questions and post your answer in the comment box so that your peers can have a look and they can comment further. The first question says, recent Uttarakhand guidelines on UCC encroach upon the personal sphere and individual liberty of individual. Discuss. Now you have to talk about both the sides, that yes, it do, no, it does not. Then you have to give a balanced view. Does the implementation of UCC challenge the cultural practice and diversity of Indian society in the name of secularism? So when the question talks about does, you have to always talk about both the sides, yes and no. And finally, obviously, you will talk about no only in your balanced part. Why? Because if something has come up, it will definitely have its certain pros. So those you should talk about. Thank you. And the next article talks about Lokpal Act. Basically, it was in news because it was talking about the limited action of Lokpal, that there have been just 24 investigations and 6 prosecutions in 5 years. So when you cover this particular topic from prelims perspective, you should look forward to various dimensions of Lokpal. If you talk about mains, this will also fit the governance and the constitutional non-constitutional bodies topic of your UPSC GS2 mains syllabus. Now basically, if you talk about Lokpal, what is Lokpal? Lokpal is an anti-corruption authority or body of ombudsman who represents the public interest in the Republic of India. So it is basically an anti-corruption body, right? Anti-corruption body. Now after what, you should also look about its origin, that from where did we originate the concept of Lokpal. So when we talk about the background and its genesis, we consider that in 1809 there was this origin of the concept of ombudsman in Sweden. From there this Lokpal thing originated. Then 1966, first ARC, Administrative Reform Commission, it also recommended the setting up of Lokpal and Lokayukta. Then in 2005, it was again recommended by second ARC. In 2011, the India Against Corruption movement by Anna Hazare, basically it began a hunger strike to demand an independent Lokpal. This was their major demand, based on which you see the origin of Aam Aadmi Party also. In 2013, finally India saw the this Lokpal and Lokayukta bill being converted into a law. So this was the beginning. Now if you talk about the various features of this particular act, you should consider this from prelims perspective. The first thing is composition. Basically Lokpal is a multi-member body. It is having chairperson plus maximum of 8 members. Out of these 8 members, 4 are judicial members. At least 4 are judicial and the remaining 4 are non-judicial. and at least 50% of these members, they should be from SC, ST, OBC, minorities or women category. So basically this body shows that it is very inclusive in nature. Next, if you talk about qualification, so the judicial member, these who are minimum 50%, they should be either current or former judges of Supreme Court or Chief Justice of High Court. Just read it very loud and very clearly. It is not talking about current or former judges of High Court, but current or former judges of Supreme Court or Chief Justice of High Court. So remember this very carefully. And the non-judicial members, they should be some eminent persons with a minimum of 25 years of expertise in anti-corruption policy, public administration, vigilance, finance, insurance, banking, law or management. So minimum 25 years of experience for non-judicial members. And for judicial members, they should be former or current judges of Supreme Court or Chief Justice of High Court. Next, when we talk about their jurisdiction, then who all are covered in their jurisdiction? Basically, their jurisdiction covers Prime Minister, ministers, member of parliament and group A, B, C, D officials of central government. It also covers those institutes who are fully or partially financed by the government, but excludes those who are only aided by it. This is a very important point. You should always talk about those exceptional criteria at various places which may be framed as a question by UPSC. It also covers any body which is receiving foreign contribution above 10 lakhs rupees. Now, when you talk about appointment, so Lokpal is basically appointed by the president and Lokayukta by the governor. Then there is a selection committee of 5 people which is involved in the this formation of the people that who all will be a part of Lokpal. Who are these 5 people in the selection committee? Prime Minister of India, Speaker, Leader of Opposition in the Lok Sabha, then we have Chief Justice of India or a nominee by him or her, and finally we also have an eminent jurist. And this eminent jurist is also nominated by the president. Lokpal is also nominated by the president, appointed by the president, but this eminent jurist, who is the 5th person of this selection committee, is also nominated by the president on the recommendation of these first 4 people. Right? Then it is also having provision of a search committee. What is this search committee? It is basically to provide for a panel of members for the selection committee who will be selected as a part of Lokpal. So search committee provides for a panel of person to selection committee. Right? So what is their tenure? The tenure is 5 years or until they achieve the age of 70 years. So whichever is early, this is what is their tenure. Salary, it is equivalent to Chief Justice of India for the chairperson and a Supreme Court judge for other 8 members. Right? Resignation, the chairperson and also the members, they submit their resignation to president. Who appointed them? President. First Lokpal, who was the first Lokpal? It was in 2019. Justice P.C. Ghosh. Pinaki Chandra Ghosh was the first Lokpal of India who was appointed in 2019. Who is the current Lokpal? Current Lokpal is Justice A.M. Khanvikar. Who? Justice A.M. Khanvikar. So Justice A.M. Khanvikar is current Lokpal. Who was the first? P.C. Ghosh. PCG was the first Lokpal 2019. Current is A.M.K. A.M. Khanvilkar. So these were some of the facts related to the topic of Lokpal. Once you are covering this topic from mains perspective, you should see why the efficiency of the Lokpal is not achieving its target. Why very low cases? Why this rejection rate is so high? So you should consider the topic from mains perspective in much detail. Now this is a practice question. You should attempt this question and give the answer in the comment box. The first statement says the Lokpal is appointed by the Chief Justice of India. You know, I told who appoints it. Lokpal and Lokayukta are constitutional bodies. So you should attempt this question and comment your answer in the comment box. And the next article talks about the budget session of the parliament. This is in news because budget session of the parliament is starting from January 31 and it will go until 4th April. If you look into the relevance of this particular topic from your UPSC syllabus, this will fit your prelims part very easily. Also in the GS2 syllabus of UPSC mains, it will fall under provisions regarding budget, right? So when we talk about the budget session of the parliament, so basically what are parliamentary sessions? What are parliamentary sessions? So parliamentary sessions are basically periods during which both the houses of the parliament, they conduct their business. It is Article 85 of the Indian Constitution which empowers the President of India to summon each house at intervals not exceeding 6 months. So this is very important from your prelims perspective, right? So it is Article 85 which empowers the President. By convention, what do I mean by convention? That it is not mentioned in the Constitution of India. By convention, there are 3 sessions of the Parliament which are held annually. First is the budget session, about which we are talking now. Second is the monsoon session, which usually begins in July and it finishes in August. And last is the winter session, which is held from November to December. Right, so these are the 3 sessions which are held as per the convention but are nowhere mentioned in the constitution. These are certain things which you should keep in mind. Next is this budget session. It is conducted as per Article 112 of the Indian Constitution. Why so? Because Article 112, it mandates the presentation of annual financial statement, which we also call by the name of Union Budget. This particular budget is divided into 2 parts. Under the first part, there is presentation of budget and general discussion. We will be talking about this in the upcoming slide. And in the second part, there is detailed discussion for grants and this finance bill is passed, right? So this is something about budget session. Then if we talk about the budget session of Indian Parliament, it basically begins with the President's address. Then there is presentation of annual financial statement, that is Union Budget, and finally there is discussion in both the houses. The primary objective of budget session is to basically discuss, debate and approve the Union Finance Budget, that is annual financial statement, which outlines government's fiscal policies and priorities for the upcoming financial year. So basically government is taking approval from the parliament regarding its policies, its fiscal policies, its revenues regarding the upcoming financial year, right? Throughout this budget session, various MPs, what they do, they conduct a thorough examination of budget proposals, they propose amendments and they participate in constructive discussion on various policies, on various announcements of the government. Basically this session, it also includes various legislative businesses and debates. It is the longest and the most important session of all the 3 sessions. This budget session is the longest and the most important session of the parliament. This budget session, it also has a recess. Why so? So that various parliamentary committees, they can basically participate in the budgetary proposals. They can discuss various budgetary proposals. They can participate in the discussion of various budgetary proposals. Finally, this budget, it is presented on February 1 since 2017, and the Economic Survey of India, it is presented 1 day before the budget. So it will be presented 1 day before the budget. So since 2017, this budget is proposed on February 1 every year. These were some of the factual information regarding the budget session also, and in general regarding Article 112 and the budget of India. And now we also have a practice question where we have given certain statements regarding the budget session of the Indian Parliament. The President's address sets the agenda for the session. The Union Budget is presented by the Finance Minister in the Lok Sabha. The Rajya Sabha has no role in the passage of the Union Budget. Now try to attempt this and post your answer in the comment box. And the next article talks about Model Code of Conduct. Basically this is in news because of upcoming Delhi elections. Recently Aam Aadmi Party pointed to various activities like distribution of shoes and sarees by BJP, and it blamed Election Commission that they are turning a blind eye to the activities of BJP. So if you look for the relevance, it is under the topic of Constitutional Bodies Election Commission in your UPSC GS2 syllabus. Now what is a Model Code of Conduct? Model Code of Conduct is basically a set of guidelines issued by the Election Commission of India for various political parties and candidates to maintain decorum in the election campaigning, right? Now what is the duration? It basically comes into force immediately after the announcement of election cycle, or you say election dates by the Election Commission of India, and it remains in force until the completion of the electoral process, or you say until the date the results are out. If you talk about the legal enforceability of MCC, this is one of the biggest criticism with respect to Model Code of Conduct, that it is not legally enforceable. But still, if we see the past few incidents, its effectiveness has increased. Why so? Because Election Commission of India, under its powers of Article 324, it is taking strict actions against the violation of Model Code of Conduct. The actions can be through censure, it can be through warnings, or any other criteria, the strictest most taken by Election Commission of India. Now what are the penalties for its violation? The various penalties for the violations can be, it can basically issue warning, as I said, or it can even go against the registration of FIR. So these are all under the powers of Election Commission of India. So when we talk about the application part of this Model Code of Conduct, the application part of the model conduct is on the parties, on the candidates, and on the ruling government, right? Basically it governs the election related activities, and you can say rallies, speeches, hate speech, use of official machinery, and all those things. It also says that the campaigning, it must stop 48 hours before the end of polling, which we also call by the name of silence period. It also says that there should be no announcement of any new scheme, policy or projects by the government when Model Code of Conduct is in practice, it has been announced, right? Next, if we talk about the history of evolution of Model Code of Conduct, we can trace its history to 1960, which was the origin of Model Code of Conduct in the assembly elections of Kerala. The state administration, it prepared a code of conduct for political actors, right? Next is regarding 1962, Election Commission of India circulated the Model Code of Conduct to all recognized political parties and state governments. It was then followed in the Lok Sabha elections of 1962. So first state to implement Model Code of Conduct was Kerala in 1962, and which assembly Lok Sabha elections followed it? 1962 Lok Sabha elections. Then in 2014, Election Commission of India, it issued guidelines prohibiting parties from making promises that exert an undue influence, and it also suggested that manifestos must indicate the means to achieve these promises, that whatever promises regarding freebies or Revdi culture you are making, just ensure that you are also able to implement them, so that public is not befooled and public votes you based on your promises, right? Next, if we talk about the judicial recognition of Model Code of Conduct, we have this case of Union of India versus Harbans Singh Jalal and others case of 2001. What happened there? Supreme Court, it ruled that Model Code of Conduct would come into force the moment Election Commission issues the press release, and that is what is the case with respect to the duration of Model Code of Conduct today. This ruling, it laid at rest the controversy related to the date of enforcement. Earlier this was the controversy that when this Model Code of Conduct will come into practice. So this particular case, Union of India versus Harbans Singh Jalal and others case of 2001, it said that the day this election schedule is announced, Model Code of Conduct will come into practice immediately, right? So these were some of the rulings of the Supreme Court with regard to Model Code of Conduct. This is very important from your prelims perspective. Regarding mains, you should look forward to the various challenges, and the first challenge that comes to our mind when we talk about Model Code of Conduct is lack of legal enforceability. That when it is not enforceably legally, people are not bound to follow it and people violate it like anything. There is a practice question before you on Model Code of Conduct. It is a set of guidelines issued by the Election Commission of India for political parties and candidates. It comes into force from the date the election schedule is announced until the date results are out. It has statutory backing. So you know, based on the discussion that we had, what all are the correct statements. So just comment the answer in the comment box. Thank you.